What's the edge in your opening that we all can kind of support and celebrate today?
Yeah, reinforce the sky to ways of not being so occupied always with the weather and in the things and more to reinforce the awareness in what is real in me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Inga, Elizabeth, and Debbie, are we up for that? Reinforce, celebrate what's real. Stop being so occupied by the weather. So as people joining, as we're coming together, what's that like right here now for each of us? The the weather, this it doesn't change, this it doesn't come and go. In IFS, we call it self. Past call it beingness, isness, true nature. Are you knowing or being the sky, this causeless being, this self-fulfillment? Right now, what flavor of this is here? And we have Kathleen with us today too. It's been a long time. How is okayness appearing for us? How is well-being here? Might be sense of presence, silence, or as Rupert Spira of Jose's inspirations might say, are you aware? We notice this that is aware, this awareness that's here, this that's hearing, this that's aware of the space around you, this that's aware of the sensations that are happening in the body. And are we able to discern the sky, this that is aware, from the sensations, from the thoughts? And as we notice, this that is aware, this presence, this moment, this now, is there anything lacking there? Or is there's just okayness here? Can we touch that? The okayness of the now, perhaps the perfection of the now, perfection of the sky. There is no lack, no wanting in that. And what's it like? What's it like to know that? What's it like to be that? If we can touch it, if we can glimpse it, this presence, this okayness. If we, as we feel this in our body, what's that like? As Kelly says, no problem to be solved. What's that like? Does it feel like it's overflowing? Does it feel like just some stillness, some silence? What's that like for you? And in a few minutes we'll go around and celebrate what's happening in each of us. Or we do that because we want to include absolutely everything. What if you heard some noise underneath your bed this morning, today, and you reach down? Whoa, there's a lamp here. I've never seen this lamp before. What's that doing here? And the top comes off this magical lamp. Some kind of voice appears or image appears, and it says, you have 3 wishes. You have to make them in the next 2 minutes. And the question is, what would you wish for? And this is where we become aware of our parts that are longing for fulfillment, that are longing for happiness. Or just you. What do you want? When you think about this lifetime, what would your wishes be that would give you greater happiness or fulfillment? I want my ideal partner. I want my partner to change. I want that ideal union with another. I want $10 million. This money would give me more fulfillment, more happiness. And we're not making this wrong. We're celebrating these voices within us. Idiot, this precious humanity that wants fulfillment and happiness. What would yours be? Oh, I want my body to work like it did when I was 20 years old. I want it to look like it did when it was 20 years old. I want certain people back in my life. What would your wishes be? And this is where we just open the space for all your parts that are all here to serve you. What, as you hear the wishes or you hear the part that's trying to be, oh, what would my 3 wishes? What would be most prioritized in my system to give me happiness and fulfillment? See if you can kind of locate them in your system. And we'll go around and ask a while, what's here. If you can locate, where do you hear that voice? Oh, if I had $10 million, my life would be better. That's what I want. I want $10 million. I want my body to be like Brad Pitt's body. It's like, what is it that you want? And see if you can kind of get a sense of a location for these wants, what Rupert will call the content. Like, is it in the center of your head? Like often to me, it's out in front. I'll hear the voices. Or for some of us, it's all somatic. We just know it within our body. We feel it, the sense of contraction and want. For some, there's even an image. See if you can find a location for these, that way you hear, the way you're aware of what would these wants, these 3 wishes that you'd have. And then lastly, as we're aware of this, that wants something, has a sense of a future, has a sense of causation, that this will give me more happiness. As we hear these wishes, these wants, can we also be aware of what Jose was speaking of as the sky? The self, the fulfillment that's here now. Whatever flavor that is in you right now, maybe it's just a sense of presence, where it's that awareness. There's awareness of these wishes. Can all of this be here simultaneously? Can the wishes be here as well as this that has no wish, that is fulfillment, that is okayness? How does your system do this? How does your system make sense of this? Sometimes we use metaphors in effortless IFS, like the sky, the planetarium, and the parts, these voices as a collection of planets. or sometimes it's soaking in a hot tub, or sometimes it's like a theater stage where the parts are there. How does your system make sense of being of both of these simultaneously? And last question, how intimate are you as or with all of this? How intimate are you as this self, as this beingness that is fulfillment? We're almost done. This is a really deep, intense intro. And how intimate are you with the parts of you that would get really excited about Aladdin popping up from under your bed and being able to have three wishes? Like, finally, I can get what I want. How intimate are you with those voices? And what's it like having all of this be here? Okay, that's welcome, everybody. We get to have an intimate exploration today. I've locked the room with the six of us. And as we're here now together, noticing that we're not alone in this, there are five of us with you, connectedness here. Just as we rest in this for a moment and rest in self, and perhaps rest as with awareness of what's arising, the parts that are arising. As Jose is new with us, I'm just going to quickly do my housekeeping. Just that as we all know, I'm a mediator, not a psychotherapist. And this is not the psychotherapy of IFS, but rather friends and colleagues exploring. And if everyone's good, being kind of responsible for your own journeys today, if I could get a thumbs up from you, please. Good, Jose? Thank you. And then just here we are together. Here we are now. And then the other housekeeping is just as always, I've got the recording on, but only my square visually would be shared if I share this electronically with others who are interested. But the audio of your sharing could be shared. And just to know that if there's anything that's said that you're like, I'm not so good with that, just stay on at the end and let me know, and I'll go delete, delete, delete for that section. If everybody's good with that this might be shared, if I could get a thumbs up from you, please. Great. So let's go around and hear how life is moving in each of us today. It might be, if you'd like to share about, we're always curious about what the most prominent quality of self is for you, how beingness is showing up for you, and also the parts, kind of at least the two parts that are loudest in your system. And then we'll celebrate and join you in that. So we'll just go around. Before I do that, is there anything bubbling for anybody that's like, wait, I need to say this. I don't want to wait until we go to Inga to say this. Anything bubbling? Any like, anything?
Yeah. I,
Yay!
well, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, because, that part of beingness gets hijacked really a lot by the parts that are fighting in me, you know? And actually coming here and you just asking us really to drop in or something to the moment, say I put it that way. And then I realized, oh yeah, that can be here. But by myself, I never realized that because in fact, I think this blending's got to like do something before I can be, so I just wanted to say that.
Wow.
And I was in Thailand for like 3 weeks and then in work coming back was like a lot. So anyway, hope to be here more often. I'm really grateful that you're doing it Saturday and Sunday and Monday, because I think I can do all three of those days.
Oh, wonderful, Kathleen. So as we hear Kathleen share that, what did you get from that? When she says, wow, there's lots of parts going on. It's kind of messy. Maybe it's a little loud here. Can we all relate to kind of the loudness in our system as we hear the parts and maybe multiple parts? And sometimes we think that we have to have all that calm down. Like we need to fix it. We need to find a mediation, find a resolution, find peace in the foreground before we can know this beingness that's here before, because it just gets obscured by everything. But what Kathleen's pointing out is that, wait a minute, I can have all that loudness here, and this can be here too. I can be aware of this beingness, whatever it is in your system, right? We've got I've got a list of 100 words that have described it for different ones of us, whatever your word is for it. How does your system go with what she just said? Is it more the sense of, well, you'll have a part that's like, I need to fix the foreground. I need to kind of find resolution or find fulfillment for these parts before I can know the concurrence of self. It's just to notice whatever part is helping in that way. And then we'll just kind of go around. We'll go to Inga, Debbie, Kathleen, Elizabeth, and Jose. It's just how we show up on my screen. And we'll just see how this goes together. And we'll pause in between each one for anything that's bubbling for us because we have the luxury of a small group today. Inga, hey, what's going on?
Hey, Sid. I'm happy to be here, and I'm also happy, I love these smaller groups. It's such a nice, kind of intimate. And I have parts that are often scared, in a big group, So my parts are really happy about that. And so my being is showing really up as a lot of an aliveness, pulsating, vibrating aliveness. And also spaciousness, I feel like, just not really bound. Very peaceful. And when you brought up the lamp, a part of me was like, gosh, I have only one wish, And that came up probably a couple of years ago, is I would love to really live from a place of love and compassion. And it used to make my parts really, really sad. But there's also, and I listened a little bit more from the parts, there was also a wish for healing. And there was also a wish to be able to really connect with people. That's kind of a challenging thing, to have a deep and vulnerable, open connection. And I feel my parts really, they often contract, like, oops, around people. So yeah, and it's interesting that I have this aliveness, and at the same time, I feel very tired. I couldn't sleep for 3 nights. I had a lot of parts coming up that I already knew, but they were, well, you could say there was a real intense trigger. And I can see that once a part gets blended, it's easy for other parts to blend. It's almost like one switches with the other or activates others. So it was a quite intense time, and I'm still with those. I have a good amount of very young parts, like newborn and baby and toddler. They live in my chest, and today it was a gift to be with a friend and to realize that these parts seem to have a hard time really experiencing my presence, but they can feel when I put my hand on my chest, and not just like lightly what I used to do and didn't do anything for me, but really with a good amount of pressure. It seems like it was really
Inga, can we
grateful.
pause for just a minute? Because you've shared
Sure.
so much. I want to.
Okay.
just let it all sink in for all of us and to see what we're receiving in what Inga's sharing before we go on with this. There's so much here. All right, here, my question is, with what Inga's sharing, is she just speaking about her system? Or is she pointing what's current, what we all know within ourselves? And can we feel a resonance, almost like a tuning fork, as she speaks of self and she speaks of these parts? And then for Jose, he said this before some of you arrived, his interest was reinforcing the sky, the self, the knowing that, the intimacy with that. And Inga started today with this beingness here. It's an aliveness in her, the spaciousness that's here now. My invitation for all of us, what's most like aliveness that's here in you? What's most like spaciousness? And how do you know that's here? How do you feel it? How do you know it somatically? And if you're having any difficulties finding it, we have the gift of Inga here. We can just tune into her system, this aliveness, this spaciousness. As the skies, we're becoming more intimate with self, with nature, with our true nature. Didn't want to miss it. Inga was pointing to parts in her that are here. When she spoke of this Aladdin lamp, that there was one wish, just like it was to be and live from a space of love and compassion. We all find a resonance with that. But it would be a part, right? Because self is fulfillment. There is no wish in self and beingness. It is fulfillment. So this would be a part or content that would want to live more or always from love and compassion. Can we sense and feel that in ourselves? This that wants more of that. Debbie and I've studied compassionate communication, which is all about that. And it's what? Can you find that resonance? And as you find that resonance, can you also know the self that's here, the beingness, the fulfillment that's here? Maybe it's the aliveness and spaciousness. Inga also spoke of a wish for healing. I'm wondering if that came up for others with the 3 wishes, a wish for healing. And here's a question for all of us and for Inga. If that wish, if Aladdin said, or is that the genie called it? The genie in the bottle said, "Okay, you got it. Healing is here." What would you have? What would you have then? What would we find if that wish for healing was fulfilled? What would be here? What's the quality of self? Would there be like, oh, everything's okay now? Or I feel alive, or I feel happy, or fulfilled and okay? What would be here if the healing was done? Inga spoke of also this other wish to really deeply, openly connect. Can we find that in our systems? This longing for connection, for deep, open connection, this shared humanity, this deep connection, not ever being alone. We're connected with everyone, or however that plays. Can we find that yearning? And what would you have? And Inga, in a moment, will come back and see how this plays for you. But it's like each of these. If the connection if you've had the connection, what would you have? If there was that connectedness, and Inga's described as connect with people in a deep and open connectedness. What would you have if you had that? If the genie was like, okay, done, you got it. That connectedness was here. What would that be? If we were living, if you stepped out in the world later today from that connectedness, what would be different? What would you have? Is it fulfillment? Is it love? I would be overflowing in love. And lastly, Inga spoke of these young parts in her system. And in IFS, we call them exiles, these young parts that have kind of been buried or that carry burdens of like remnants of trauma or contraction or difficulty, young, vulnerable parts. And she was describing that sometimes they don't feel this self. They don't feel that home is here, that okayness is here. They still feel alone. And can we all relate to that? That there are aspects of us that are still in the shadows or still feel like they have shame and they're kind of buried. And then in Inga's system, there was a sense of like touching the heart. There was a somatic experience that helped those parts perhaps feel connectedness or care or love, or that they're being seen. What in your system supports those aspects of you to sense that they are being seen, that they're being included, that they're being heard, that they're being welcomed? When does that happen in your system? Or is it like Inga's? Is there like, oh, almost like giving yourself a hug, and somehow the parts feel that? What does it in your system? And lastly, without going any there, because the effortless IFS, we don't like, okay, spiritual achiever, let's go down and know these parts, and we don't do that. But instead, just notice if you can hear kind of the longing of these young parts in your system to be seen, to be heard, to be welcomed, to be released, to be free, to be included. That like, just to hear that, to receive that, to welcome that. All right. Thank you, Inga. Please, Inga, how did this play for you? That was a whole lot, but you opened up so many doors for all of us. What did you find, Inga, with all of this?
Oh yeah, these very young parts, they have a longing. I mean, it's really a newborn, a baby, a toddler, and they have a longing for, first of all, safety and care, care and love, but it's mostly care. Probably, and also connection. So and they don't speak, that's they don't even have, I don't really have it. I mean, I have a story that I know, but they don't present their own story.
Can they taste it when you are like this?
Mhm.
Can they feel some of that love, the
Yes.
connection, the safety?
Yeah. And I don't know, so it's weird because it feels almost like they want it so much, and then it's hard for them to really take it in. It's almost like they take a little drop at a time. When they get love and care.
Is that okay? Can we all relate to that? What Inga says as we hear the hunger of our young parts, as we hear the hunger, and then it's like, okay, love is here. There's acceptance here. There's welcome. There's care. And somehow they don't. It's like, but this is so weird. They're not fully taking it in. They're not fully accepting it. Perhaps there's some protection, some carefulness. Can this love, can this safety be trusted?
Mm. It also
However,
almost feels like it's hard to believe that this is they so wanted, the love, and then it's like they almost can't believe it because they never got to know anything like that. They never got to they never heard like something like "I love you" or it's just not. Yeah.
so my next question might be a big deal in our systems. And this is that okay? Is it really okay that some of our vulnerable parts might respond the way Inga's describing in her system? They don't know this. They don't trust this. They've never had this. Is it okay? And then can we also notice there's often a spiritual achiever in our system or a healer part that's like, okay, finally, these parts can feel the love. They can be unburdened. They can be released. Our system can be healed. And so there's often parts of us, voices that like want this to happen. It's like, hey, we've got an hour and a half together exploring this. I really want healing to happen. I want my parts to be able, the fear in my system to be able to get relief. Can we notice that impulse? And in EIFS, we'll often call like a healer part, an achiever, a pusher. And as we're aware of this, this is a tough one. Is it okay if these vulnerable parts never let it all in? If they never completely let it all in, maybe that some of them just stay just the way they are. Can you find okayness with that? Can that be welcomed? Can that be included? If a part says, no, I don't trust this, no, can we find okayness with that? Any kind of final thoughts on these beautiful windows you've opened for us, Inga?
Well, thank you, Sid. Yeah, I mean, I certainly have a healer part that gets very sad, hearing that. It's like, oh, they might never heal. But it is for being, it is okay, it's like it is okay that they are here. Exactly the way they are.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Inga. And we all can relate. Can we all find like a healer part like that, like Inga's describing in our system? And as Inga says, beingness, the self is okay with the no. But the healer part, like we can feel it's wanting, right? It's wanting. But here's a question. Is that healer part ever going to be fully satisfied? Or is it, See if you can feel that, be with that in your system. Okay, well, that was a lot. That was really a lot for us and where Inga took us to start today. That was a lot. So here we are. We could like shake it all off and just like, because we're not going anywhere today. We're not doing anything. It's just our parts that be like, hey, spiritual achiever, let's get this understanding part, healer part. We're just being here and we're just playing with and celebrating how life is moving in each of us. We often call this a word, again, I'm speaking of Rupert Spira today because Jose comes from that background. Rupert will call it the pathless path. It's like nothing has to be done. It's already here. Fulfillment is here. Or it's like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. It's like Glinda was like, home was here all the time, dear. You just weren't ready to hear it yet. And it's like in this, there's this sense that home is here. The self that we're speaking of is here. Fulfillment is here. Okayness is here. There's no place we have to go. We just get to be here and enjoy each other and play today. And lastly, before we go to Debbie, let me just ask each of us, how are you? How are you? And just to notice, see if there are multiple answers to that. How are you? Here are the parts that come up. Oh, I'm excited. That was amazing what Inga shared. I'm a little tired. When Inga said tired, I can relate to that. There's tiredness here. And there might be another part like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say or how I'm going to say it, or I should say it a certain way. We notice what's here. How are you? And we also notice the beingness that's here, whatever flavor that is. This aliveness and spaciousness that we heard about in Inga. Like notice what that is for you, the how are you, what's here. And then in the midst of all that, here we are. Sense of here now, this presence, this shared being, this connectedness that's here amongst us. And then I have a real treat for you, and her name is Debbie.
Hello, nice seeing everyone. Thank you, Inga, for sharing. I so resonate with so much of what you said. Let's see. Again, for me, it's because of my nervous system. It's how I connect is more through silence when there's a lot of talking. Sorry. It's not you. It's like, it's the outside, the external world that activates me. I'm like, if I have quiet, I mean, well, of course there has to, I have parts that can go, even when I have my real activated parts, if I do, have quiet and just the stimulation, the overstimulation, I can calm down, then I can connect. But yeah, so there's kind of a dichotomy between my internal, like internally, I am able to connect, not all the time, but to be more present and to be, just with my parts, but in a really grounded way, not, you know, and then, and then when I'm externally out there, it's more, especially with people, then it's more challenging for me. Then I just like, it's like my parts just take over. That's kind of what's going on with me. So I find it like a bit challenging to be on this call because, but I've been doing that. Like I just like really keep trying to go inside and connect. Because if I look too outside, it overwhelms me. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, like I pay a lot sometimes to go hear speakers online or go to hear them live, these people that will speak about, okay, this is the way it is, this is self, this is part. And does it get any deeper and more profound than what we just heard in Debbie's system, as far as really this transparency? Where there's ease and where there's difficulty. How did what she shared, how did that make sense to you? Were you able to receive like the gift of what Debbie just shared with us? And she might be like, Sid, what are you talking about? I was just talking about my difficulties in the parts. But perhaps it's the whole thing, just in what she just shared. The silence. Is that the word for you too? Can you relate to silence? For some of us, it's calm, it's peace, it's equanimity, it's okayness, it's silence. And can you relate to if there's not silence, if there's not stillness, if there's not peace here? It's really hard. There's just a lot of parts, and then I'm just blended with the parts. But if, like when Debbie describes the going in, and we find this self, this background, and then there can be awareness of these parts that are arising. what helps each of us go there? In Debbie, it's the word silence. And what obscures it for us? Debbie describes like when she's out in the world, it's difficult because she's just managing all of this and she'll get caught in her parts. What helps us? What helps you shift into this, to know the silence that's here? Perhaps even in the midst of the activity, in the midst of being in the world. Does it need to look like stepping back? Stepping away from the stimuli? Can you join me in being curious about, as we're curious about Debbie's system, does it allow more intimacy with our own systems? Because sometimes this can be scary, being intimate with what's really happening here, with our parts, with the fears that are inside of us. And this is where we get to do this as a group. As we hear it in Debbie's system, it becomes easier to just have compassion and love for everything she's describing inside of her. And this part of the game we're playing here is we do that. If we can really love Debbie's system just the way it is and really appreciate it, then something seems to eventually happen where it just kind of wears off. Like, wow, I'm starting to touch some of that in me too. This love that I have for Debbie's parts and just how it plays in her. And then it allows greater intimacy with our systems. Debbie, can I ask a couple questions or how you know?
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate you I feel like acknowledging it's something, I can't share with a lot of, well, I can share, but I'm not sure if they would understand my my experience of, so I really appreciate being heard and acknowledged. So thank you.
Thank you. And just to push the edge for us all with this before I ask a question, we call it the third level in effortless IFS, that we're working on 3 levels simultaneously. One is the self and the parts and the relation. That's what we're playing with mostly today. Second level are the ahas that occur, which we call the tipping points, as we get a sense of, wow, self is here, as Inga describes, as aliveness and spaciousness. I know that too. Or my qualities of self that are always here, or perhaps the intimacy with the parts, or hearing what the parts are longing for. That's as the system updates. The system is learning, it's updating. The third level, so much of this is going on. That's what we were speaking of the pathless path, the possibility that what's here now is home, is okayness, is fulfillment. And that as Debbie speaks of some of her challenges, is it really a problem? Do we see it as a problem? Do we see anything in her system like she'd be better off if something changed? Notice if you do that, and then is it possible that Debbie's system, that it could be just perfection and innocence just the way it is? If you can join me in a fascination. And then Debbie, you spoke of there was some challenges in being here today because this is a group and this is kind of out there. What's that like as far as the challenges? Anything you'd like to share, or maybe what part that comes up and says, oh, I need to do this right? Or where does the challenge come?
It's for my system. I think I said this. It's when it's not anyone here, but when I hear it, just my parts. It's like when I hear a lot of talking, verbal talking. My system tends to get overstimulated, overwhelmed. So because yeah, I mean, Yeah.
And what
So
is it?
emotions,
What responds that does that? As we hear lots of talking, as we hear like, oh my God, it's been 42 minutes and Sid hasn't stopped talking. It's like it just as we hear that, what 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 responds? And so what part is it? It's like, oh, I can't understand all this, or I don't understand what I need to do with this, or it's so loud, I can't find the stillness. What's the response?
it's like it's too much, too much. It's not what you're saying. It's not what anyone's saying. It's like, or anyone in the world saying, it's just too much coming in, that like from my brain to, it just goes, I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, it's my system. You know, I know it's, yeah, it's parts, of course, but it's also my system just being highly sensitive.
Got it. And not to minimize that, to even to really appreciate the, because we all can relate to times, or maybe all the time, when our system feels really sensitive. Like walk into a mall or a crowd or a concert, like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. But here's my question. Can we find the part that says this is too much? Not to minimize it, but just to be able to be clear on what aspect of us says this is too much. I don't like this. I prefer it to be different.
You're
And can
asking,
we?
I'm sorry.
I'm kind of asking you. I'm asking, but
Oh, okay. I just want to
I'm
make
kind of
sure.
asking you that. But let me ask you another question with it. Is that, can we find okayness with that, with the part that's like, I really don't like this. I prefer it differently. Can that be included as well? And for all of us, wherever the resistance is, whatever the parts are that kind of, I got this figured out. I don't know what works. I'd like it to be different. Like, can that voice in us be included as well? Can that voice be welcomed? And by doing this again, we're not saying we want that part to get everything at once. We want to create an environment where Debbie does know the silence and does have exactly what she wants. But I'm asking if that voice, if that expression, if that resistance can be welcomed and included as is too. What do you find? What's happening inside you, Debbie?
Yeah, again, when I'm quiet and I go inside, stop the outside stimulation, and close my eyes, I find, yeah, acceptance of all of it. Acceptance. Yeah, all the parts. When I'm, and again, it's like, it's when my eyes are open, when my ears, that's when it becomes garbled. It's just like, it's too much. It feels
Oh,
too much. Like it's really uncomfortable.
so that is what we want to look at for all of us, is what are we blending with? And I just love how Debbie just shared that. It feels like it's too much. It feels too much. We want to honor it. These are the parts that are taking care of us, right? They're taking care of us. They're helping us know, hey, they help to guide us. But at the same time, can we even have space from that? The parts that say it's too much, can they be welcomed and included as well? And this is part of the game in Effortless IFS that we keep doing, the idea of seeing multiple parts, seeing two or more at the same time. Can we include the resistance? Can we see that? And if we have time today to do a little dive, we'll go into that together. But for all of us right now, just to celebrate what Debbie's speaking of, can each of us find two parts and be aware of them simultaneously? Sometimes it's like the planetarium and their planet, but see them in one view. Because notice when we see them in one view, where we're seeing them from. It's the real trick here, and it makes it in effortless IFS. Really, the only way we suffer is we blend or identify with a part. And if we can be aware of two or more at the same time, it becomes difficult to fully blend. It becomes much more difficult. And that's what we're playing with. How's it going, Debbie?
Um, uh, I have this part that goes, I don't think Sid understands.
Perfect. Perfect.
I did feel like you understood when you acknowledged me in the,
Yes.
and then I have these other parts that go right now, like, I don't think he gets it, which I mean, if you're not totally highly sensitive, you might not understand. It's like a neurodivergent brain. So yeah, so it yeah, that's just, I mean,
Can we all hear that part? Like what you're not understanding. Said you're not understanding. It's really sensitive here. And they call this maybe a neurodivergent brain. And it is sensitive. Once there's silence here, everything can be okay. We can welcome. But when there's too much, it just shuts down and it can't do these things. Can we all hear this? Can we be fascinated by this part that Debbie has? And Debbie, I'm sorry, you've really we really had you in the spotlight today, and I hope it's not too much. It was just so rich what you're offering us.
yeah.
And
Like a part. Oh, I was just gonna say a part of me just says like, well, never mind. I just like the part is saying, oh, and it's just a part, just like you don't know how challenging it is. You know, it's not just like, oh, let's look at two parts at two time and at the same time. So yeah, and maybe like for me, it's just like celebrating that that I am taking care of myself the best I can, by having periods of silence.
yes, and you're giving this part of you a stage. It's like, whoa, Sid, you're not understanding me. You're not getting this. And just for all of us, this has been about Debbie, and it is about Debbie, but this part she's pointing to, can we all find that? The part that's like, no, you don't get it. You're not understanding how difficult it is here. You're not understanding perhaps what I've gone through or what my situation or how my mind works. You're not getting it. Can we all find that part? And the courage of Debbie's system to give that part the mic and let it, like she's really speaking for it. Can you find in your system, they're like, I want to do what Debbie did. I love what Debbie did. Debbie's like, let it speak. He gave it space and said, no, you're not getting it.
Yeah. Thank you.
How are we doing, Debbie?
I feel very, like much more connected to you. So thank you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah.
Thank you. So how was that for all of us? It's like the gift that Debbie just offered us for our systems, for our parts. Because we'll go to Kathleen in a moment. I just want us to be able to digest it and then not overwhelm our systems as we keep going. How was that for you? What's here? How are you? Rising. And is there an interest for what's arising inside of you? To the how are you? And you find an interest in that. Wow, look what's here. There's excitement, there's curiosity, there's confusion. Oh, how does that really relate to me, that part of Debbie's? Can I really find that? Whatever's happening, how are you? Or does it just go to this stillness, to the silence that Debbie was speaking of? What's here now for you? Are you ready to go to Kathleen, or there's anything bubbling in any of us that would like to be said before we go to Kathleen? All right. Hey, Kathleen, what's going on?
Wow, I think I found another part just listening to Jeffy. So, all right, the whole thing, you know, the wanting to heal yourself, or, you know, I want self-compassion too, like the, you know, the lamp under the bed, like like Aladdin giving you the, you know, like I want to be able to have self-compassion for myself, because I know that always helps me. Well, because I want it for myself, and it does help me with other people. It helps me be more with like the larger self, I think you call it here, the self-led. If I have more compassion for myself, and but that got into the healing part, you know, wanting to heal. And when you asked if it was okay not to heal, that was it. And I was like, no, no, that it deserves love. You know, it was just like, no, I won't give that up. Or there was something in that that was really strong. Like, it's wrong. You know, it's wrong to just let that kid think that will never be loved. You know, like I want to love that kid. You know, and there was something that when Debbie was saying, "No, this is my brain," and you know, the biodiversity and and all that, and like I like holding the two, and there's a part of me that came out like, "No, you have to keep trying," or something like that, like that kind of like desperate, and yet, and this is what, you know, I'm working on that. Well, I'm working on trying not to fix myself, which I kind of feel like I've got to give up because it's too hard for me not to at least want to fix myself, you know, like that's too hard. And you know, I'm trying to work on listening to my body, listening to myself, and, you know, recovering from orthorexia and anorexic, and it's all about, you know, like, well, now it's all about chocolate, no chocolate, you know, that's essentially, but, and it gets so confusing. No, have these rules for yourself, this is what you need, and then don't have these rules for yourself, this is what makes you crazy. Yeah, so then it's like, it's really
Kathleen,
healing.
let me just bring everybody. Let me just, because I don't want to miss, I don't want us to miss any of this. I don't want us to miss any of these gifts of Kathleen right here. How is this for us as we hear Kathleen speak about her inner world and what's arising in her? As she says, I want to love that kid. Like, no, I'm not going to give that up. I'm not going to give up this commitment to care for what's arising inside of me, to care, to want to give them love, to correct, to have them not be alone, to heal. I'm not going to give up on that. Just that no. Can we all find that? Can we all relate to that inside of us? Perhaps it's a healer part, helper part, a therapist part. Can we find that voice? The one that touches suffering inside our systems, contraction, pain, vulnerability, and doesn't want to leave it alone, like to leave a child in the shadows, in the dark by itself, that's suffering. And then can you find in each of us Where do we hear that? The no, this is what I care about. I am here for these parts of me. That voice, where do you hear it? Where do you find it? Is it a healer part? Is it a therapist? Can we find it as a part? This that Kathleen was pointing to. And as we find it, can we find perhaps awe or compassion or appreciation of it? This expression of our humanity that will not give up. Can we find it? Can we find it? This is part of the magic of this IFS labeling these as parts, because we get to see them, get to be aware of them. And this is also how we deepen into this fundamental okayness that's here as we become aware of these aspects of us that might seem like they're me, when we can know them as these precious parts. Can you find even that, this one that says, no, I'm committed to compassion and love for my parts, for everything that arises in me, for healing? What do you find, Kathleen?
Actually, I think, well, that's not true though, because I'm not compassionate to all my parts. You know, like, because I would, if I was, I'd be compassionate to that part.
But how about that one? How about the one that's just committed to healing, to being with that child? What about that one that's just committed to that?
Yeah, because some stuff that I do that I don't like about myself, but at the same time, like, I feel like that's a big survivor part in me. And I feel like I will always be true to my survivor, you know? Like, that's a part that just holds on to me tight, you know? I don't know. You know, or
So
there's something,
as this part holds on to you tight,
yeah,
this one that holds on to us, like we can all find parts that just hold on tight. Can we see the innocence in those aspects of us? The one that's holding on tight. Can we see perhaps the contraction and the wanting and the desire and the yearning and the innocence of it?
yeah.
And then from self, for all of us, from self, from beingness, is there a problem with our parts that are doing that? Are there a problem with these parts that we're speaking of, that we're pointing to? From self, from beingness, is there any problem here? Or is there just, wow, look at this beautiful part? It's just aware of the part, recognizing, appreciating, accepting.
Yeah, when it comes from that place. When it comes from that
Place.
place. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. So let me just with when Kathleen points to that place, in this game we're playing, and this is similar to Rupert Spira has his version of it. They're kind of different places. Like one place, we call it I think it's the third view, which we call riding the bike of being, which is just, we're only really interested in beingness. We're not really interested in the parts. Like, can we stay on the bike? Can we stay here as the sky? Can we stay in this okayness, this love? And we're just, in India, they call it neti neti, not this, not that. We're just separating, we're discerning, and we're getting to know what Inga calls the aliveness and the spaciousness. And then we all have different words for it. For Debbie, it's the silence. But then from another place, there's a sense of welcoming, as we call it, the hot tub or the roomie's guest house, where there's just a welcoming of everything that arises. And they're seeing the innocence of everything and just appreciating. This is where a lot of the healing happens, right here.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going there as well. That's what where we were just going, Kathleen. And then there's a third place that we often touch, and you'll hear like Inga and Elizabeth speak of this. There's a sense of, and Rupert Sparrow call it kissing the toad, where this separation, we're so intimate with these parts, this part that's grabbing onto us, we become so intimate with it that the separation, the sense of two ends up kind of disappearing a little bit. And we start seeing that everything is made of this. And we don't rush any of this. It's just it just happens. I just want to offer that as Kathleen is sharing her system, that we have all three of these at play. How you doing, Kathleen?
Good, good, yeah, good. Yeah. Mhm. So there's something, and you hit on it again too, like wanting to be more I want to be more self-led, but also like I'm human. That self-led part is really the divinity in us, and I know,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
but I'm human, and I
Yes.
cannot be that 24/7. I go to work, or I work here, whatever, I interact with you.
Yes.
I just be with myself even, and it's hard to be with me 24/7.
Yes. Yes. And I love this. I mean, we all bring so many gifts to this group, and this is one that Debbie often brings for us, that reminder that, hey, there's self, but then there's this humanness. There's this. And what about that?
Yeah.
And what about that? And that's one of the reasons we keep going to. Can we see the innocence in these parts? Can we see in classic IFS, there's a sense that there are no bad parts. Everything, every expression of life in us has a positive intent, is our premise to this work. And so you can, in a way, we can just forget about self. We can put that aside. And there's this enjoyment, a celebration of the way life is moving through us, all of these parts. And this is the game of seeing the innocence. Like if we were we were going to a kindergarten and we were looking at the kids on the playground, would we really see, oh, that's a bad kid, that's a good kid, that kid has a problem that's crying? No, we would get glimpses of, wow, look at this. Look at these kids. Is there really a problem here? And hopefully they wouldn't let you be a teacher if you were seeing problems or seeing something's really wrong with that kid, if you weren't able to see the innocence of the kids. That's really what we're playing with here for our parts. Just like you say, Kathleen, I don't want to just leave them, that riding the bike of being and like pushing the parts away. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the opposite. I want to celebrate my parts. I want to celebrate how life is moving in me. I want everything to be welcome. Dick Schwartz will say this is kind of like being an inner bodhisattva. We're not going to leave until everything is welcomed, that we see the beauty and innocence in everything that arises in us.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that higher self, or that the being part, is very helpful for me to be able to see from there.
Yes.
But I can't always do that.
Perfect. So for all of us, is it possible that we could go the exact opposite direction from the bike of the bike of being? And just with Kathleen saying, we're just celebrating the parts, and we're going just really into the immanence of this and celebrating how life is moving through us in the parts. Because that's how this guy that developed IFS, that's how some say that he went all the way. He didn't do any of this non-dual stuff. He just fell in love with everything that arose within him. And he's such a treat to be around, because that's what it's like. You can just see he just loves everything that arises in us. And that's a real gift of Debbie and Kathleen today. If we can really hear that and receive it. And I'm just aware of time. I feel like I want to jump to Elizabeth pretty soon. But Kathleen, is there anything else? I just don't want to. There's such a richness in what you and Debbie have offered us. I don't want to jump away from it. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, that's a lot. That's a lot. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kathleen. Before we go to Elizabeth, how was that for you? The gift of Kathleen's system, the celebration of her system and her parts, just the way they are. Were you able to celebrate them and appreciate them? Or did you have some parts that came up that were common, there may be a commentary part or something, and just to notice what arose? Were we able to appreciate her system and her parts as if we were looking at a kindergarten playground? The preciousness, the innocence of everything that arises in us, or not to put the point, I don't want to put the spotlight on Kathleen. You can do the same game with me as you hear my parts. Like, can you see that? Or as you hear Inga's parts, it's all the same. How are you doing with that? See the innocence of what arises within us. And we're hoping we're doing that so ultimately it comes home and we find that within our own systems. So before we go to Elizabeth, here we are, sense of here now, this beingness that's here, this shared being, this connectedness that's here. We notice the silence, the spaciousness, the peace that's here. Or we just notice all of the parts that are here. There's no right way. When I say that, I'm not trying to move us away to exclude parts. Or we just do what Dick Schwartz did, and we just celebrate our parts. We go fully into the parts. Elizabeth, there's been so much here, and I'm so curious what's happening inside of you with all that we've done today.
Let me check my headset's working. Okay. You can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Never can be sure about that. I really am experiencing a felt sense of being ground down. Just in that ground down, low, feels like no aliveness, just and I'm here, and I guess this is the self and presence part. I'm here to refuel. And the refueling, like, that I get on these in this group is it's okay. No matter radical acceptance, no matter what the felt sense is or the experience, or feeling no aliveness, like roadkill. And like, can that be okay? And then sometimes I hear you said your voice in my head saying, can you celebrate that? And I love it when I hear you in my head say that, because that's turning the tables on oh, this is bad, what's wrong with me, and oh, I wish I was in a different state, and whatever.
Before we go on, I want to make sure there's plenty of time for Elizabeth and Jose. Like to, if it's all right, have the option of extending for 10 minutes today, so we have plenty of time. And if you need to leave, thank you. Elizabeth, I'm curious as you start sharing, you mentioned to come here to refuel. How does your system, how does that happen for you? What is refueling?
Refueling is, it's connection, hearing other people where they are, and the teachings about can that be okay, and can that be okay, and the whole widening of the circle of acceptance, which it's gotten a little shrunk down after being in survival mode all week, and now it can reopen, like, okay, I am totally ground down. I don't sense any aliveness. And can that be okay? We celebrate that to add another little punch.
Yeah.
Punch in the
What's that like? having been in survival mode, we all can relate to this, right? We got to make it through all these things we have to do during the week. But Elizabeth says, and uses a description of that. I don't really know. I haven't really used the ground down. What's that like?
A felt sense of I guess a code word would be exhaustion, but just like uh beyond that, like I use the word roadkill, but it's a good question. But it's almost like and I feel it like when people are talking, like I'm kind of not there, like they're just life forces does not feel present.
Let me ask you and all of us a question. This that Elizabeth's describing, what's most like this in your system that you can find here now? I mean, it's just kind of exhausted. Ground down, the life force isn't present. Maybe it's a flatness. We allow ourselves to know that. Or maybe you need to go back in time to a time when you were just so exhausted. It was just too much and something just notice that here and see if you can find it as a part, find a location. Like, where do you hear that? Where do you feel that in you? This ground down, this kind of flatness, deadness, roadkill, exhaustion. Where do you find that somatically, or where do you hear it? So while we are aware of that, just notice, how does beingness or self, how do we know that here? Can we find that as well here? We notice this part, ground down exhaustion. We also find beingness. And what is beingness right now? Is it silence? Is it presence? Is it awareness? Is there an okayness? Just as we go really slowly, we also notice that there might be a part here that was like, oh, I'd really like to change this state. I'd really like to change that flatness. That's of roadkill, that sense of exhaustion. I'd really like it to go away or change. Can we just notice if we have a part that prefers aliveness, fullness, vivacity, the roadkill sense? And we can notice that as a part, and also notice the beingness, the self, the presence. As Elizabeth was sharing, the sense of the widening the circle of acceptance. Can this be okay? A sense of grounded down that's here, this exhaustion, as well as the part that would like it to be different. And our widening circle of acceptance, can this beingness, this guest house, this acceptance that you are, can it even accept that? What do you find, Elizabeth? What's here?
It really feels like on a felt sense level, like beingness is completely obscured when there's so much exhaustion, which is okay, totally. Like it's like when it feels like that place, like can't connect to my higher power,
Perfect. Perfect. So let's just be right there, because this is kind of what Kathleen and Debbie have been pointing to for us. That it's so easy to go to the part that's like, no, but I want the higher power. I want the beingness. I want to know that it's here. But right now, it's obscuring it, this exhaustion. Is that how would you describe that? This not being aware of?
um like just like a heavy layer obscuring any sunlight, or the weather's just, it's like the clouds are so heavy that it's just not, there's not access to it. And
Of that. So as we hear Elizabeth describe this, the cloud's so heavy. There's not access to the sky, to the self, to this okayness. Can we all relate to that? Do we all know this? And then as we're aware of that, can we also hear the voice, the part that says, I don't like this. I want it to be different. See if we can find that as a part. If you can hear, like, where do you hear that? Where do you hear, I want this to be different. I don't like this. Because we who come often, we know Elizabeth. Elizabeth's often the one that's like, everything is self. It's all this. It's all beauty. It's all this. And she probably has a part that's like, oh, I want that. That's what I like. There's a joy there. I'd prefer being there. Can we hear that voice in us that wants it to be different, that doesn't want it to be blocked by the exhaustion and by the clouds? And as we're aware of that voice, see if you can find where you hear it or where you feel it, this preference. Just like Kathleen's parts, that part that was grabbing on to her, that we found compassion and love for. Can we find love for this one that doesn't like the way it feels right now? I don't like this exhaustion, this self being blocked, the sense of roadkill. We have compassion for that part in Elizabeth, in us. Can we touch an okayness even here, even when self is being obscured? Can we touch an acceptance even of this when we just feel flat? It's like, I can't believe I came to the group today. Just coming to the group was a lot. Really didn't feel good today. Maybe I just wanted to sleep or zone out and watch TV. I'm just kind of flat, dead, exhausted. There'd be an okayness with that. How's it going, Elizabeth? What's happening inside?
I'm not so aware. I don't feel like I'm not hearing a part that says I don't want to be in this state. If it is, I'm not, because I'm not too much aware of it, because I've heard so many times that, you know, that it's okay, whatever state I'm in. Maybe, and there are days where I don't feel my higher power, and that's okay too. This is just like how the terrain looks sometimes. Like, I have a lot of, yeah.
In saying that, do we notice a part that has a preference, that prefers it the other way, that prefers the sky being clear and just the shining of being? Or right now, maybe there's just the acceptance of what is. What do you find?
It's crazy because it's more like, if everyone else is like happy and joyful, there'll be an alienation and feeling separate. If other people are, struggling with, whatever they're dealing with, it's makes it okay. That's what I find. That's how my system reacts.
Yeah. So how about that? The part that compares. Can we all find that Elizabeth's pointing that compares?
That's the second arrow. Yeah. That's the big ass second arrow.
And as we notice that part in us, for all of us, what is it that that part longs for? What's it longing for? What do you find, Elizabeth? What does that one really want?
To be okay. Like not worse than.
Yeah. Elizabeth, you've opened up a whole lot, and I'm wanting to make sure we bring it together gently for your system.
Thank you.
What's like, how you doing? How you doing here now?
I'm glad I'm here. I'm grateful to you and everyone who comes. We can just show up as we are and just right. That's it, right where we are.
We are. And do any of your parts, as we are, the invitation is to receive the gifts from Elizabeth here of these parts of her and as what she's sharing. But I also wanting to check to make sure your system's feeling okay, that it's feeling safe, that it's feeling welcome, that it's safe. The vulnerability that was shared here, if there are any parts that are feeling, whoa, I share too much, is everything, just make sure everything's all right inside with your system, with what you've shared with us.
Yes, you look worried, like you're worried or something, but I felt like I shared a felt sense, not something deeply embarrassing or shameful.
No, not at all. But it's more like there's such a vulnerability. Like today, I woke up really tired, and I had a part that was like, oh God, maybe I made a mistake posting this for today, because I was really tired, and I actually had a part. I went and got a protein bar with 15 grams of sugar. So like, God, I'm going to be embarrassed if people show up today, and I'm just like, And so it's maybe it's just coming from that. I just so appreciate what you opened for us, and just want to make sure everything's okay, because I know when I share of that, there's a part like, why'd you share that, Sid? That's our secret.
No, I have that about other stuff.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Anything good? Thank you. Well, we'll head to Jose in just a minute. Before we do, how was that for everybody? How's everybody doing? This has been just so full today, and we've saved Jose, who comes from this Rupert Spira non-duality background, and I'm really curious how this all is coming to this first time he's been with us, how this is coming together in him. Just before we go there, how are you doing? How are you? Notice that there's some exhaustion. Notice that there's still like, whoa, can I really take in everything? How do I make sense of this in my system? What Elizabeth was sharing, as we find this all in our own systems. And then we notice the okayness that's here, the peace that's here, the silence. Also, perhaps the curiosity is like, what is going on with our new person, with Jose, with with where we've done so much today. Jose, what's going on?
Well, I'm very, very grateful to you all. This has been very, very good. I mean, very good in terms of experiencing myself much better than when I started here. That when I came here, I mean, I could just relate with each and every one of you, everyone. I mean, you talk about parts, and my language has been always about feelings and thoughts and objects and so on. It's the same. but with each share of you and with your help in experiencing it, I'm now experiencing this presence that I wasn't experiencing for a long, long time. So this is just precious. There was,
What's that?
I
What's that
mean,
like? What's that like? What's this presence like?
it's surrender. It's peace. I mean, you mentioned about what I would ask Aladdin this morning, and that was exactly the three things would be peace, freedom, and happiness, which are the things that this part in me is always lacking. I want to be more happy. It's not even more, I want to be happy. I want to experience peace all the time. I'm addicted to feel good. I find this completely unfair that I don't feel good all the time. You know? So this is the basis of my resistance. And in the last recently, there has been really a lot of disagreeable parts being very loud, a lot of dark clouds, like so many of you mentioned, and a lot of pressure and exhaustion and feeling survival mode most of my life and tired and all that. And yeah, and now suddenly I realize that all that resistance that feeds this fear, this anxiety, this is again gone. And I don't know how to explain. I mean, you express things, all of you, much better than I am able to. I'm much more into not knowing and surrendering and experiencing. But yeah, I thank you, and I really felt part of. So I mean, I want to learn more with you guys and to experience more with you guys, if possible.
Oh, okay. I can't relate to what Jose was sharing. It's a joke. Can we just, does that speak to all of us? Like, no, I want happiness. I want this happiness all the time. I want this fulfillment. I want this peace, freedom, and happiness. And like, it's not okay that it's not here.
Yeah,
Not okay with that. I resist that.
it's a struggle. Yeah. What the hell? Here I am feeling bad again. This can't be, you know. And yeah, and I stop. I mean, what uh, Debbie was sharing, I relate that a lot. I have to stop very often because I need my silence. I need my space. Um, either through meditation or through self-inquiry to investigate, hey, who is this one now, you know? Who are you? What do you want, you know? It's a very busy upstairs here, full of parts and conflicting parts and so on. This I had already read before, and when you challenge to try to identify two parts, I still don't know how to. I don't find it easy for me. I will try to to see if I can manage that. The most I can manage is really through self-inquiry to challenge, you know, who is this guy feeling the fear? Where is this fear coming from? Who is this guy? That's as far as I go, you know, until now. Yeah, because most of the things happen, I don't know how and why, like it happened today. I mean, listening to all you guys, I just got into this space of peace in quiet and enjoyment. And I didn't do anything. You did everything for me through your expressions and yeah, and through this resonance. I mean, that's really it. So I don't know. Thank you very much. And I hope to also contribute that you all may feel also better the way you made me feel better. Thank you.
I think, you know, whenever Jose's here, we have to have him come last because it's like, oh, beautiful to bring it all together that way for all of us.
Thank you.
It's about time to close. How was that? How was that for all of us? Jose shared and his appreciation of each of us. Can we take that in? He said he didn't do anything today. We did it all for him. You're sharing.
I want to say thank you. That was really very beautiful. And also just everybody, you know, it was such a treat, such a gift. I really need to say that.
A treat. Come back again. Thank you for you. Thank you. What a beautiful day.
And I just want to say I really appreciate everybody's authenticity. I think that really, oh, yeah. Such a gift. So thank you.
No. See you later, everybody.
Okay, bye, Sid.